We are going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to the Fair and Attainable Housing Ideas Forum. We are so glad to have you here with us today. This is a new initiative. This Ideas Forum is a new program that NAR is launching to be a support to our state and local associations in advancing fair and attainable housing in your communities. So certainly NAR is very committed to advancing fair and attainable housing at the national level, but we want to make sure that we're a really strong resource to you in the work that you're doing locally. The goal of this forum is to provide you some training and some resources from NAR, but also to connect you with association peers so you all can be ongoingly providing each other with support and ideas for the work you're doing. We're really hoping that at the end of this session, you have one or two nuggets of a really great idea that you're going to bring back to your team that you would like to implement in your association. So just in terms of knowing what to expect, we're going to introduce you to our NAR team so you know who your people are at NAR. We're going to do a panel of success stories to just kind of show you and demonstrate some great things that local associations can do. We're going to have a summary of kind of great ways that you can implement fair and attainable housing policy in your association. And then we're going to get into kind of workshop mode. We're going to have some facilitated peer brainstorming sessions where you all will be in breakout rooms to work together to come up with some ideas. And then at the end, we will share some resources. A note that this webinar is being recorded. You will get a copy of the webinar. You will be getting an email probably next week that has the recording as well as a survey that we will really hope that you will fill out comprehensively because this is new and we want your feedback. We can tweak this in the future if it doesn't quite fit. If there's anything that needs to be changed, we are open to that feedback. But we're really excited. We didn't promote this very highly only because it sold out so quickly. So clearly there's a lot of enthusiasm and we'd love to have the other folks benefit from this in the future. So please stay tuned for that survey within the next week. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off here with our NAR introductions. Crystal?
Hi, my name is Crystal Allen. I am Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at NAR. I staff the NAR Diversity Committee as well as the Association Executives Association Diversity Committee and the Multicultural Partners Group. I also oversee our diversity grants here at NAR, and welcome everyone.
Hi.
Najee?
Hi, everybody. I'm Najee Bailey. I am the Fair Housing Policy and Programs Analyst. I work with our Fair Housing team in regard to researching, analyzing, and working on our policies and programs to strengthen fair housing in real estate.
And I am Hannah Dadenfelser. I am the Grants and Resources Manager on the Community Outreach team here. I manage our Fair Housing Grant as well as our placemaking and rural outreach grant. So I'm a resource to state and local associations who'd like to tap into those grants and resources. And we'll talk more about our Fair Housing Grant shortly. Nia?
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you all, and thanks for joining today's webinar. I'm Nia Duggins. I work on the policy advocacy team at NAR, and I serve in the role as Senior Policy Representative for Business Issues and work on a host of different policy issues that impact realtors' business operations. So I'm super excited to be on this webinar with you all this afternoon and for you also to learn more about what we do on our respective teams. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Colette Massengale, and I am Senior Policy Representative for Fair Housing. So I work closely with the great Alexia Smokler and Najee Bailey. I also co-staff the Fair Housing Policy Committee, and very excited to be here and share some of the programs that we believe will help you to advance fair housing and homeownership opportunities in your community.
Hey folks, thanks Colette. This is Alexia here. I lead our fair housing efforts here at NAR. So that includes our programs, our education, our Fair Housing Month programs. We also do policy here. So we work in the advocacy team, we do lobbying. We also advise state and local associations on their programs and policies. So if you have any fair housing question, we're attorneys as well, legal, policy, programming, we're your folks. Give us a call.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Wendell. I'm the Director of Community Outreach, and I lead the Community Outreach Program, which houses a variety of grants and resources to help associations advance their community development and fair housing initiatives. And I also am the staff executive for the Housing Opportunities Committee and manage the Housing Opportunities Grant Program, which you'll hear a lot about today. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much to Hannah for organizing all of us here today. Just a pleasure to be with you.
Well, thank you, everybody. All right, we're going to go ahead and transition here to our panel. We have some really great representatives here to give a little bit of a spotlight on a few programs and initiatives that you can consider in your community. We're spotlighting two associations who have done some really, really great work. First is going to be First is going to be Latasha Beal, who is the past chair of the diversity committee at the Oregon Realtors. They've done some really great work in Oregon that she's going to share. After Latasha will be Amanda Lankard, who is the CEO of the Battle Creek Area Association of Realtors, to talk about a years-long comprehensive series of initiatives they're doing in Battle Creek, Michigan. And then you'll hear from Colette Massengale from our Fair Housing Policy team, who's going to go over a number of grants and a number of resources and tools that are available from NAR and some things that you can do in your. So listen with the ears of what are some things that you all can implement, and we will kick it to Latasha.
Thank you, Hannah. Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Latasha Beal, and I'm the past chair of the Oregon Realtors Diversity Committee in 2023. So thanks for having me here today. I just wanted to chat briefly about the Fair Housing Summits that we've had at Oregon Realtors in 2022, 2023, and 2024. So our first annual Fair Housing Summit started in 2022. We netted over 153 participants, and we really started with the basics. We had a pre-recorded conversation played for about an hour with Richard Rothstein highlighting his book, The Color of Law, discussing how segregation started in our country. And then we have a presentation from the Fair Housing Council of Oregon as well, talking about specifically discrimination in Oregon. And then we have Lawrence Nunn discuss the changing demographics and how that can impact, our markets. And we really aim to close with resources where participants can get more information or get connected. So as much as we wanted to provide knowledge, we also wanted to equip them with what can I do differently, and having resources to take back into their work, life and share with their peers. And since the 2022 Fair Housing Summit was so successful, we brought Leah Rothstein back in 2023, or brought her back in 2023 to discuss the upcoming book, Just Action. Since we laid the foundation about how we got here, we thought it was important to discuss, what can we do now? So we continue to build on that in 2024. And it's really important, we felt, to just bring in local experts. So we brought in Josh Lenar from the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis, and he discussed building a sustainable business through inclusion. And it's just great to have people in different places that know and watch the stats of how our country is changing and our state specifically, so that we can change our business practices to impact the people around us. We also had our Oregon Real Estate Agency Commissioner, Steve Strode. He moderated a panel on where can you report bias, discrimination, and fair housing violations. And so it's important that if we do see these things happening or our clients are experiencing them, being able to point them in the right direction. And so he moderated that panel, and we brought in BOLI, which here in Oregon is the Bureau of Labor and Industries, Ibrahim Coulibaly, and the Fair Housing Council's the Fair Housing Council of Oregon, Shail Reuter, came in as resources to talk about what do you do when you report bias, discrimination in fair housing, and how do you do it. We also opened up participants to having knowledge about down payment assistance programs and where they can encourage their clients to go for home ownership counseling. Again, aiming to educate and provide tools for our real estate practitioners to walk away with and start implementing in their business. So we had panelists discussing community land trust, down payment assistance programs, home ownership counseling, specialty loans. Then we talked about what does fair housing best practices look like in action. So we had a realtor and a lender as a panelist there. We ended this last year's 2023's Fair Housing Summit with an accessibility panel. Year after year, we received high praise and great feedback from participants about the Fair Housing Summit's content. But one of the critiques that we did receive was the lack of focus on accessibility. And so we closed that with an accessibility panel discussing mobility and visibility accessibility, mental disability, and neurodivergence. And accessibility and digital and hearing accessibility, talking about how can we make sure that our practices are inclusive for all. Part of our goal is just to remind agents of their commitment to fair housing and that it takes all of us to make significant change across our state. We also provided breakout sessions in 2023 and 2024. After we've dumped all this great information on these participants, we wanted to create space for them to ask questions or to get connected. And so we did have spaces for breakout rooms, and we partnered with NARAB, the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, NAREP, the National Association of Hispanic Realtors, ARIA, the Asian Real Estate Association of America, and the LGBTQ Alliance, so that participants could get connected with organizations that are invested in their respective communities to increase fair housing opportunities. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for your time.
And pardon me, I forgot to share with y'all, we're going to do a Q&A when our three panelists are done. So if you want to use that Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to submit questions to our panelists, we'll have about 10 minutes to ask all three of them questions. So pardon me for the interruption. I'll hand it back off to you, Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Lankard, and I am the CEO of the Battle Creek Area Association of Realtors. And we have been on a fair and attainable housing journey over the past 6 years. And it all started with a fair housing investigation. In 2016, the city of Battle Creek announced the results of a fair housing investigation, which indicated patterns of discrimination and differences in treatment of Black testers versus white testers. So our association decided at that time that we wanted to take action and we wanted to provide more education to our members and be a champion for fair housing in our community. So we started to apply for NAR grants. And in 2017, we received a NAR diversity grant to hold fair housing classes and implicit bias classes. We partnered with our local community college to hold those classes. I myself was new to my position, so I was trying to soak up any and all information about fair housing and the real estate community. So Richard Rothstein's name kept on coming up over and over again. So we applied for another NAR diversity grant to bring Richard to Battle Creek in January of 2019. So the next slide, you'll see that we brought together some diverse partners, many of who don't normally work together. So our library, VOCES, which is our advocacy organization for our Spanish-speaking friends, Urban League, Habitat for Humanity, City of Battle Creek, over 200 people attended. And if you go to the next slide, Megan, over 200 people attended, people that, don't normally meet together. We had a diverse crowd on the iciest night in January of 2019 when school was closed. But this was the process of us beginning to build relationships with community members, elected officials, and people who the fair housing investigation impacted. And so over the next few years, we continue to meet under the facilitation of TRHT, which is Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, which is a framework developed by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation to address historic and contemporary effects of racism in communities and institutions. And so as a part of that work, we decided to create a first-time homebuyers guide in English. And this was created in the spring of 2020. We felt it was really important that if we wanted to reach our target audience, which is Black and Brown families, that this guide should reflect the people in the guide. So we took pictures and we included information about fair housing as well as lending laws and regulations. So fast forward after COVID, we decided that we wanted to really focus on reaching our Spanish-speaking population. So we translated our English home buying guide into our Spanish home buying guide through the NAR Housing Opportunity Grant. We also hired photographers to, and then I think it's the next slide, maybe. Nope, it's not. So we also hired photographers to reflect the target audience. So the Hispanic and Latino community. Again, I think it's important for people to see themselves reflected in those marketing pieces and educational pieces. And so this year we received an NAR Fair Housing grant to bring Leah Rothstein, which is the co-author of Just Action, and Cheryl Cashin, the author of White Space Black Hood. It was about 5 years since we had brought Richard to Battle Creek, and the sequel to The Color of Law was published, and it just makes sense. So TRHT, the Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, co-partnered with us, and we partnered with another historically Black church. Washington Heights United Methodist Church is in the process of building affordable housing through public and private partnerships. And we felt it was really important to highlight and lift up their work because they are located in a redlined area of the city that has seen tremendous decline and disinvestment. This year, we also received another NAR Housing Opportunity Grant to create a first-time homebuyer video. Not everyone can attend an in-person presentation because we've been holding first-time homebuyer presentations across our community. So this was our effort to bring the information to people in the comfort of their home. It's also a resource that our members can use with clients. And you know, when they watch the video, they can decide to attend an in-person first-time homebuyer event, or contact a lender to get started with that first step. So we hope to have these videos completed by the end of October. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. I am excited to talk a little bit about some programs that we think really furthers NAR's fair housing and homeownership initiatives. One of them is the Undesign the Red Line program. Many of you probably have heard of NAR's Bias Override course. And then since I created a fair housing course when I was at Maryland Realtors, I'll share some suggestions for creating an impactful fair housing course in your own community. So with that, let's see. Yes, all right. So talk about undesigning the red line. So we know what redlining is. Maps that were created in 1930 determined essentially where investment would be, but also where monies would not be invested. Those communities were redlined, and we're still dealing with the impact of those past policies and practices today. So Undesign the Red Line is an explorative, interactive, envisioning a framework for addressing the issues created by redlining. When you go through the exhibit, you'll ask questions, how did we get here? What does it mean for us? How do we move forward? What are some solutions that we can come up with to help us get to where we need to go? So Undesigning the Red Line, which we partnered with on a couple of different occasions, we exhibited with them or collaborated with them in DC. And I'll talk about just very briefly an exhibit that is coming up at NAR next. So what the exhibit does is it explores our history from a shared value perspective and really grounds the conversation in housing and opportunities in a very honest way. And it allows attendees, it allows all of us to really contribute to the value and the design of solutions that will move us forward and help our communities to transform. So again, we have partnered with Undesign the Red Line in DC. Let me go back a little bit there. Just a little freeze there. We partnered with Undesign the Red Line in DC, and we will be partnering with them in Boston as well. So if you happen to be going to NAR next in November, please do check out the Undesign the Red Line exhibit there as well. And you can use an NAR Fair Housing grant to bring Undesign the Red Line to your community. So with that, I also wanted to talk a little bit about Bias Override. And that is a program or a training that NAR partnered with the Perception Institute to create. I have taught the course a number of times, and it really helps us to be in the right mindset so that we can recognize when our biases could lead to a fair housing violation or a denial of equal services. And more importantly, this training really helps us, gives us the tools to help us override our biases so we can so that we can be sure to provide equal professional services to our clients and customers. And Megan, I'm going to ask you to help me move it forward because I am not. There we go. All right. So what role, so very briefly, just going to go through this really, really quickly. What role do real estate agents play in the lives of their clients and customers? That's a question that comes up very immediately in the course. You can go ahead and move that forward. Talk about concepts like the fairness paradox. So we hold these values of justice and equity, yet our behaviors don't necessarily reflect our ideals. And how is that? We can move forward. We talk about concepts like the unconscious brain versus the conscious brain, move forward. And again, I'm just kind of highlighting and giving you a teaser of what some of the concepts are in the course. We talk about the definition of implicit bias, move forward. Another concept we talk about, really focusing in on why is it important. So we can bring in some of those questions about why is it important. We all have implicit bias. We're not blind to these biases. And our good intentions are not always enough to help us to move forward. So move on to the next slide there. Why is this important? Because we all have these biases. We have greater biases towards people we're not familiar with. We know that living in segregated communities increases our biases, and integration and genuine interaction decreases our biases. Move forward. We will have interactive, when you take the course, there'll be interactive opportunities for you to, or engagement. One of the questions that it'll ask, or one of the opportunities is the question of how many triangles do you see? Go on to the next one. And then we really focus on what implicit bias is, how it's increased by stress and multitasking, what things don't reduce those biases. Go on to the next slide. And then and then really, most importantly, interventions and tools to help us interrupt our biases, things like clear protocols or creating a checklist or asking questions and listening interactively or listening attentively to our client, peer-to-peer intergroup contact, which is really taking the time to develop authentic relationships with people from different identity groups. And then finally, we really focus in on to the next slide, last slide there, with bias override is some best practices, using standardized procedures, letting the customer set the limit. So these are some of the concepts that you will see when you bring the bias override course to your community, to your association. And again, you can use the NAR Fair Housing grant to bring the course to your association. And then finally, I just wanted to share in that last slide, Megan, thank you so much. Tips for creating an impactful fair housing course. So work with a small group so you can bounce ideas off of each other, devise a theme. One of the themes that we came up with when we created the course, and I was creating a course for Maryland Realtors, is the theme of building a better house. And building a better house on a better foundation. So come up with a great theme, do your research, maybe you reach out to a local historian. You want to bring in those local stories to really make the history come alive. You want to talk about our national history so that members can grasp the bigger picture, use case studies like Long Island Divided. It's a fantastic resource which we used, incorporate some impactful data in our snapshot of race and home buying is a great tool. Maybe you'll spotlight some hot topics, and then you want to drive home some best practices. So those are some of the suggestions that I have for creating an impactful fair housing course at your association. So with that, we can have some Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Colette. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Latasha. Latasha, if you could come on in and join us here. So everyone, we've got a few minutes budgeted here, so you all can ask some questions of our panelists, whether you have questions about kind of the strategy and the planning of some of the work that they've done, or if you maybe want to ask a little bit of technical questions as well, that anything that helps you figure out how you can implement some similar work in your community. So I'm going to give it a minute for some questions to come in, but I actually had a question I was going to start with to Latasha. Latasha, could you share, so you're the past chair of the diversity committee as a member for, in leading that conference that the Oregon Realtors put on. And so my question is, can you talk a little bit about the role that that committee members played and the staff played in these? Folks who are joining us right now, we do have a few members, but a lot of folks here are association staff that would be helping with the planning. So you could share any kind of insight you have around the roles.
Yeah, so the staff liaison for the diversity committee was key in getting the grants to get Richard and Leah there. So it helped us with that part of it, with the kind of the budgeting part of it. Also helped us, she would help us get letters that we could send, like email templates that we could send to get sponsorship, which was also very helpful. We shared those with our diversity committee members also, so that we could get some monies in for these kind of events. And then, but a lot of the planning happened with the diversity committee, the chair and the incoming chair, and then some of the members kind of deciding the direction of where we would go. But definitely the staff liaison kept us on track as far as timing and money and all of those things, and giving us the boxes that we could work within. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's great. Amanda, one question I have for you is about following this, we're going to have a presentation from Alexia Smokler about about policy, how you can implement fair and attainable housing policy in your communities. I'm curious, have you all started conversation as a result of the projects you've been doing for the last few years? Have you all started conversations about policy initiatives, lobbying, and advocacy work that you all can be doing in Battle Creek and in Michigan?
Yeah, we have definitely. I think the key to promoting policy, changing policy is relationships. And this work has definitely built relationships with at least our local municipal government in Battle Creek. And I think that's key to doing that. They are fully on board, and we have a great relationship with them locally. And of course, we work with our state, Michigan Realtors, to work legislatively at the state level as well. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And then Bella has a question to Amanda. I would love to view your video for first-time homebuyers. Is there a place I can find that?
So our English first-time homebuyer video will hopefully be done by the end of September. And then our Spanish first-time homebuyer video will be done hopefully by the end of October. So if you want to reach out, we're going to put it on our YouTube channel. So if you want to kind of flag that or follow us with our very few followers on YouTube, unfortunately, you'll be able to see that. And then I can take your name and we would be happy to send that out.
Thank you. Bella sent a thank you as well. Colette, a question for you as someone who's developed CE classes yourself at the state level with the Maryland Realtors. What were the barriers you came up against? What were the hardest components that you had to work through in that planning process? I'm wondering if you have some tips for people who are, especially if they're creating their first fair housing CE class, what they might come up against and might need to work through that they might not expect.
That's a good question. And I think one of the things that we really kind of tried to tackle is how do we present, because our history is so challenging. I mean, it's hard to hear, and it's difficult material to present. But you want the audience to be receptive, and so we really tried to think about how we, could present the material in a truthful way that didn't turn people off. So we really, and I think through the stories, through creating a sort of interactive engagement, and just kind of building that into the class, really helped us kind of get over that obstacle. But that's one of the challenges is getting that context out there so people really understand why we are where we are today, and doing it in a way that allows people to be receptive to it and want to kind of figure out what the solutions are.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So I'm going to give it, if anybody else has any, this kind of last call for Q&A from the audience, but I'm really appreciate Colette and Amanda and Latasha sharing their experience, sharing their expertise of the great work they're doing in their local community. I'd say certainly, I think these panelists are very happy to be a resource to you. If there's ever ways that you want to, copying is what's the phrase? The imitation is the highest form of flattery. I think we believe that in realtor world, absolutely believe that. And I'll share that, with the project Latasha worked on with their conference, their Fair Housing Conference for the Oregon Realtors, we do have a success story on the Realtor Party website that gives kind of a blog style summary of the work they've done. If you want to take a look at that, that'll also be in your debrief email that'll have resources within the next week or so. That debrief email will have resources from Amanda and Colette as well in terms of some links and tools that you can click right into to get at these topics they've covered. So I'm going to go ahead and transition. Thank you again to our panelists. Our next part of the this initial component of the Ideas Forum is we're going to have our Director of Fair Housing Policy and Programs, Alexia Smokler, who you met earlier. She's going to take some time to just share about what it means to advance fair and attainable housing in your state or in your region, what you should be looking out for, what you can do proactively. So Alexia is really our lead and our expert on all of that and is a great resource to you in your local and state work. So Alexia, I'll stop here and hand it to you.
Thanks, Hannah. Great conversation so far. I hope you all have been having some light bulbs go off, have been getting some ideas. We're going to go into the breakouts in a few minutes to discuss what those might look like. But first, I'm going to help you think about a few ways you might raise the bar even higher. There's so many different ways to advance fair and attainable housing in your association, whether that's education, events, creating resources, videos. You've heard a lot of examples already today. But I want to talk to you a little bit about advocacy. How do we advance fair and attainable housing in our state and local governments? How do we work with community partners to open up housing opportunities? There are a lot of different ways to go about this as well. And I'm so glad Amanda mentioned the power of partnerships because that's really key. So let me frame this out for you in a couple of different ways. First, let's talk about playing defense. I think this is something that our GADs are real familiar with. This is an essential function of our trade associations, is to keep our eye on what's coming down the pike in our city councils and our county commissions and in our state legislatures. Watch out for any bad news, and we're going to be there to stop it. Well, this applies to fair housing as well as, rent control or short-term rental ordinances or any other problematic legislation that we're trying to stop. So what does playing defense look like? Well, let me give you a couple of examples. On Long Island, and I see that Tessa Holtz is in the audience. Hi, Tessa. Like Amanda, in Long Island, after there was a big expose, the Long Island Divided Newsday documentary, they chose to open up, to accept the criticism, and to pledge to do better. And part of that for them was partnering with a local fair housing group to produce resources together. And that's how they started out. But then they heard from the local fair housing group that an ordinance was coming and that focused on occupancy restrictions. And this ordinance was going to make it more difficult for immigrants in their community to access housing. And so the Long Island Board of Realtors showed up at that city council meeting, let them know that this ordinance that was being proposed was going to have a harmful impact. And they shut that ordinance down. So that's one example of playing defense. Here's another one in Louisville, Kentucky. They heard that there was going to be an ordinance which was going to stymie housing development. They were going to do the opposite of what we're looking for. They were going to increase minimum lot sizes and make it harder to build more housing. And so the Louisville, Kentucky Association flooded that room with Realtor Blue. They shut down that zoning ordinance. One more example I'll give you, this is at the state level. All over the country, we've been seeing state legislatures consider laws that would bar the purchase of real estate by people associated with certain foreign countries, most notably China. Our state associations in Georgia, Texas, and other places mobilize with partners, ARIA most particularly, to fight back these challenges. So there's a lot we can do just in playing defense to stop bad things that we see coming down the pike. But let's talk about going on offense, because this is more exciting and more fun. So in Spokane, Washington, the association there leveraged an NAR grant to create a study. They used one of our consultants, the counselors of real estate, to address their housing supply shortage. In Spokane, their shortage was even bigger than the national average. They saw that they had a problem that they needed to be proactive. And they created a fulsome plan. I think it was about 90 pages with a roadmap of solutions, which they shared with their city council. And they have adopted a pilot zoning change there in Spokane that would allow duplexes and townhouses in all residential neighborhoods, plus triplexes and fourplexes near commercial zones and transit lines. And let me stop here for a minute to just talk about how all these different issues interrelate. We know that we're in a housing affordability crisis right now across the nation. Homeownership is becoming farther out of reach, especially for our first time and our first generation home buyers. And so we see housing supply and affordability as a fair housing issue, because unaffordable housing impacts those groups that have been discriminated against historically the most. So we include advocating for housing supply in our toolbox of advocating for fair housing. Now, in Spokane, what I want to point out is, their plan was lauded by the local government, because what they proposed and what all good housing supply plans propose will fit in with the look and feel of the neighborhood. And it's so important for us to be myth busters on this issue, because there's an idea out there that building more housing is going to make property values go down. And the people who are proponents of that idea are called NIMBYs, not in my backyard, and they'll show up at council meetings and be very vocal about it. But what we know from the research is that building more housing actually make housing values, property values go up. And so we can capitalize on these advocacy efforts to educate the public, to bust myths, that to build more housing makes values go up, it makes prices go down, it makes everybody benefit. So another example of proactive advocacy is in Washington State. Washington State, after acknowledging the impact of historical covenants and deeds and how it locked people out of homeownership for generations, lobbied for a state law that will provide a down payment and closing cost assistance to those who can show that they were a descendant of someone who had been prohibited from buying a home because of a racial restriction. That program will be funded by $100 recording fee on real estate transactions, which is not something you'd normally see a real estate association supporting. But in this case, our state association, Washington, thought this was that important that they were going to not only agree to, but advance this $100 fee that could support down payment for those who have historically faced discrimination. Regarding those restrictive covenants, we're seeing a lot of these bills now crop up across the country. Because, people sit down at the closing table, they see the historic racial covenant, it's offensive, and they want to get it off of there. I would just caution you that if you take on restrictive covenants as your issue, think about it the way Washington did, not just to remove something that's offensive, but how can we get more people into housing? I would also say that we don't want to erase our history. So if you get involved in a legislative effort relating to historic covenants, one part of that has to be preservation of that history. We can't erase the history. It's so important for us to know why we have fair housing, and we need to learn about that history. So couple more things. Now, you can advocate for these types of things with your state and local governments, but you can also create these in-house. At the Midshore Board of Realtors in Maryland, they acknowledged they had a workforce housing problem, and that teachers and nurses and firefighters were having to drive in from far away because they couldn't afford to live in that community where they worked. And so the local Realtor Association created a down payment assistance program for local workers. Likewise, the California Association of Realtors, through its Housing Affordability Fund, created a special purpose credit program, which is targeted down payment assistance for people who have been historically discriminated against, $10,000 towards closing costs if they qualify and work with a realtor. In California, they partnered with 3 nonprofits to administer that program. So you hear over and over again in these examples the value of partnerships, coalitions, and building out these resources in our communities. So just to wrap up this section, we like to think about fair housing sort of as concentric circles. And the first principle is do no harm, right? First, don't discriminate, don't make the problem any worse, and of course, don't get in trouble. So that's the basics, and that's what we need. We need to teach everybody in our trainings how not to discriminate, how to have those policies and procedures so that they're treating everybody the same. That's step one, okay? That's the minimum, that's the floor. Okay, but now what can we do to repair the harm? What can we do to assist folks who don't benefit from generational wealth because of historical discrimination? So now we're looking at things like implementing in our own businesses down payment assistance, learning about HUD certified housing counselors, learning about special lending programs, making sure our members are aware of all those resources that are already on the table. You know, a lot of the down payment assistance gets left on the table. So we need to make sure our members know about it. And then third is the advocacy. So promoting broad-based programs and initiatives that can serve more people and also stop those bad policies in their tracks. So that's what I've got. I'm going to turn it back over to Hannah for further discussion. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alexia. Really appreciate your rundown on the advocacy angle of this, which is really, really critically important and what all of us are certainly working towards. So now that you have heard about some programs and initiatives in your community, you've heard about some ways that you can approach policy in your community in terms of advancing fair and attainable housing. We're going to talk about a couple of grants that will provide funding to do some of this work. I know that is really, really important to our associations to have the tools they need to be able to get this work done. So we're going to share a couple grants. I'll just highlight NAR has many, many grants. We have additional grants that if you get a hold of us, we can help you find out, but we wanted to spotlight the Diversity and Inclusion Grant, the Fair Housing Grant, and the Housing Opportunities Grant, because those are going to be day-to-day the most applicable to some of these initiatives that we're discussing right now. So I'm going to give it to Crystal to describe the Diversity and Inclusion Grant.
Thank you, Hannah. So now, guys, let's talk about show me the money. Where's the money at? The diversity reimbursement grants support local and state association diversity initiatives and your local and state level. There are 2 diversity grant levels. There's level 1, which is up to $1,000, and level 2, which is up to $5,000. The level 1 grants, let's just start with those. Those are our basic grants, and they help associations create and increase diversity and advance diversity in their associations. Alexia mentioned our partners like ARIA. We also encourage our local associations to partner with our local chapters when they are looking to advance diversity and use these grants, as well as attending their national conferences as well to help increase diversity in your leadership ranks. This covers attendance at their for an officer or a senior staff at one of those national events. So we do encourage partnerships with our local chapters, which is what Alexia touched on also. The next slide, please. The next slide is our level 2 grants. These are up to $5,000, and these are designed to increase inclusion among association leadership. Associations may also use these grants to if you're thinking about strat planning, you're doing a strat planning initiative and adding that and hiring a speaker or just creating your own strat plan or diversity strat plan. These grants can help you with that. It's also as workshops and educational value as well. I can definitely say for 2024, with all the education training, we did a lot of grants for At Home with Diversity. Our diversity grants really covered and helped associations provide that course for their leaders and their members. So I would say the majority of our grants in 2024 were definitely utilized for the At Home with Diversity grants. So the grants are there to help you with anything pertaining to increasing diversity, strengthening your engagement and partnerships with our local chapters of our 4 partnerships, which is ARIA, which is the Asian Real Estate Association, which is NAREP, which is the National Hispanic Professionals, as well as NAREB, which is the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, as well as the LGBTQ Real Estate Alliance. So if you have any questions about partnering with those groups or have any questions about the diversity grants, I am your person for that. So if you have any questions, just let me know.
Well, thank you very much, Crystal.
Thank
All
you.
right, our fair housing grants. So I'm your fair housing grant manager for state and local associations. We have one thing I'll note on these is we actually are currently funded for 2024 on the fair housing grants, but they are closing very soon. So if you would like to use a fair housing grant in 2024, you have to apply by October 15th, and you have to complete your activity and submit receipts for reimbursement by December 15th. These are on a reimbursement model, but if you don't have time to get something in 2024, they will reopen the first week of January 2025 to apply for a 2025 grant. And you can get one level 1 and one level 2 for your association. A level 1, you can receive up to $3,000 for targeted training. So that can be funding the bias override class. This could be funding developing a CE class in your association. It could be held to hold a book club for reading the Color of Law book. The level 2 is getting at the community-based outreach and the broader appeal beyond just your members. This is very commonly used to fund conferences where maybe a fair housing conference where you open it up to your home builders, you open it up to your Chamber of Commerce, your local elected officials, and you're getting at that broad community reach. It can be used to fund the Undesign the Red Line program that Colette, if you're partnering with other organizations, it can help fund that. And it can also help offset the cost of legislative initiatives as you're getting into policy work. One thing I will distinguish, Crystal and I coordinate between the D&I and the fair housing grants. The fair housing grants are really getting at advancing protected classes at the transaction and advancing the Fair Housing Act. And we will fund things that get at the why of the Fair Housing Act. So for example, that Undesign the Red Line, that's training on the history around fair housing. So whereas and there's a little bit of it. And if you are confused on whether your initiative will be under fair housing or D&I, get a hold of me or Crystal, and we can walk you through which is the better grant for your particular initiative. I'll pass it to Christine.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for the opportunity just to talk about the Housing Opportunity Grant Program. So Housing Opportunity is part of the Community Outreach Grant Program, which those grants are a gateway for engagement. So providing associations with an opportunity to advocate, educate, and collaborate with key policymakers and stakeholders while elevating your community development and fair housing voice. So the program within our portfolio, labeled Housing Opportunity, provides associations with an opportunity to close that housing gap through initiatives that create or improve policies and programs that expand access to housing that's affordable. And as Hannah mentioned, you can leverage one grant per level this year and every year moving forward. Applications open up January 2nd. They close October 15th, as she said, and file your reimbursements by December 15th this year. So how can your association address a lack of affordable housing with the Supportive Housing Opportunity Grant? Let me give you an example. So you see level 1 initiatives. You can host a down payment assistance class for realtors so they can educate their clients on key programs by leveraging that grant up to $3,000. And that grant can cover the cost of the speaker, venue, marketing materials. Or you can use a level 2 up to $7,500 to organize an attainable housing policy summit while bringing in lawmakers and nonprofits with an eye on policy solutions to cover costs of venue, marketing, educational materials. Or for level 3, conduct a public awareness campaign. We've seen tons of those to support counter not in my backyard voices from preventing critical housing policies, such as the one you heard about from Alexia in Spokane on missing middle housing. So you can learn more by contacting anyone on the community outreach team, including myself, or signing up for a community outreach planning session. So I look forward to seeing you all in the breakout groups. Thanks, Hannah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christine. So really the meat of this Ideas Forum, as we mentioned at the beginning, is we're hoping you all can walk out of this program with some concrete ideas to bring back to your association that you can implement. So that's where we're getting into these breakout rooms. You all are going to be with the other attendees in this webinar are going to join you in breakout rooms to be brainstorming, facilitated by one of our NAR team members to kind of guide the conversation. And we encourage you to share things that you all have done that have been really amazing in your community that you think others could learn from, and also listen to others and try to come up with some great ideas for things that you all can do.
Hey, hi, I'm Katherine Latham with East Tennessee Realtors. We had 2 different associations in the room. It was local from Texas and Wisconsin. Talked a little bit about what all of us do currently, a lot of education coming from all of our associations. And our biggest takeaways were to talk about a panel, Q&A, symposium, and collaborate with multiple groups that were talked about throughout this discussion today, and also to use those grants to make these events more feasible. Hannah shared with us the CRD instructor list and traveling instructors, which we found really interesting as a way to get new, fresh faces in front of our members, which also typically helps with expanding the attendance rates at that. And also we talked about making people feel like their voices are being heard overall. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do Crystal's room. I think Barbara Eid.
We had Crystal's room. It was we had 3 of us AEs on there. 2 of us were new AEs, fairly new AEs. So it looked more for suggestions and help in how to bring some ideas and some events to our association. Zach Roop was a great deal of help and gave us a lot of ideas, and Crystal gave us the idea that we needed to watch some of the realtor party success stories and designate and identify what we really what our priorities really are. So we got a lot of information for being new AEs.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you, Barbara. All right, let's go to Christine's group. Looks like Latasha. Looks like you're going to be I got that right, Christine? Latasha is the chef.
It's me again. When we talk about what are your goals in addressing fair and attainable housing, we have Hawaii, Wisconsin, and Portland on the call. So rural challenges and affordability, attainability, and lack of infrastructure, and the impact that has on generations, and interest rates in the Portland area. And in Wisconsin, it's like the 4th most expensive for housing. So as far as NAR supporting or meeting goals, we just talked about an awareness campaign on how to encourage more tiny homes with builders, because that could help with affordability with some of our buyers that need, the house to cost less, green building or sustainability, tackling zoning best practices, and then just changing the narrative around good schools, and working with more council members to get transit accommodations or changing again those zoning. So those are kind of the conversations we were having.
Wonderful. Thank you, Latasha. Let's go to Colette's group. I think we've got Candy Sweeney.
So we talked about how to, I was on the call with Colette and Amanda, and we talked about ways to even get this introduced into the association from the get-go. I mean, it's been a very frustrating part for me as being the association executive. But I'm going to look at the DEI roadmap, set up some discussion groups, and see what I can do to make it happen.
Wonderful. Thank you. That DEI roadmap is a really fantastic tool. Let me see. I've got Nia's group, which was Ali DiGardo. Please pardon me, Ali, if I said your name wrong.
No, that's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So our DEI committee is very active, and we're actually doing a fair housing symposium featuring a drag show and a fireside chat. So it's going to include 2 to 3 educational sessions and 3 to 4 drag performances, and then an engaging fireside chat, talking about the housing discrimination experiences that these performers have experienced in their life. And we're opening it up to all of our multicultural partnerships, as well as the Blue Ridge Home Builders Association and some community partners.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ali. We've got Alexia's group, Brandon Fenton. Brandon, if you could give us a quick summary.
My name is Brandon, the Public Policy Field Director with the Kansas Association of Realtors. And as far as any of these initiatives or anything was concerned, a lot of our thought process, at least amongst the 2 locals that were in the chat with in the breakout room, was how do we get started? What are the resources that are available to us? And I suggested just going to an NAR or scheduling an NAR community outreach planning session. They will help you. If you bring them an idea, they will help you put together a plan. They will help you get connected with whatever resources they think could be viable. They will help you get connected with any NAR programs that might be viable for your idea that your local or state association wants to do. And that could be with anything. I know some of our locals express frustration about member engagement, but if you come to an NAR community outreach planning session with an idea and at least kind of like a vague roadmap, that can help you fill in the gaps and help you get connected with financial resources and other programming that can make any of these sort of ideas work.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brandon. And thank you from the community outreach team too. That's a great, we absolutely want to see y'all and set up time to talk about these things, to be hands-on with you. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to just go a little bit over, but again, please stay on because these are really important resources. So Alexia and Nia, we're going to just try to speed through a little bit of these resources at the end here. So I'm going to pass it to Nia first, who's going to share the new Pathways to Homeownership roadmap on the NAR website.
Thanks, Hannah. Yes, thank you all for staying on as well. I know we are at time, but I want to make sure that we share this new resource called the Pathways to Homeownership webpage. This webpage really is designed to provide you with a one-stop shop for all that NAR is doing to expand housing opportunities and to specifically work to help first-time and first-generation home buyers. And we have been extremely strategic. This website specifically provides resources for not only associations, but also for realtors. It also highlights a lot of our advocacy and the work that we do at the advocacy level at NAR. I know Alexia talked a lot about it, and you've heard a lot about the work that we do based in DC but it's important to know all of the resources that we have available. Also, we have highlighted a lot of our partnerships. At NAR, we have several different partnerships. One that I definitely want to bring to your awareness is our work around closing the racial wealth gap. That is something that is really a priority for us, and closing also the racial homeownership gap. And so NAR is a part of the Black Homeownership Collaborative, which is an initiative with other stakeholders to look at various solutions regarding how we can get new Black homeowners into homes. The goal is, it's called the 3x30 initiative, but we work alongside other stakeholders. And the goal is to get 3 million new net Black homeowners by 2030. We also are part of the Mortgage Bankers Association's Convergence Initiative. And we also have several other partnerships, including one with AARP and also the American Property Owners Alliance. Also, we have a lot of research around like homeownership, how it's beneficial, and how we can help communities, right? And help families attain homeownership. And so there are several research reports that are available that we believe may be beneficial to you in your work, and also that you can use to advance a lot of the events and work that you're doing around fair housing and affordable and attainable housing. We've also included a number of fair housing resources that Colette and also Alexia have highlighted today around not only the grants, but also a lot of the training and education, because we offer a lot of training and education. So I would invite you to definitely check out this site. I'll make sure that I also link it in the chat. But with that, I will now turn it over to Alexia.
So yeah, we are working on more resources here. Our latest resource that you've seen, all the folks you've seen on this call are working on, is our first-time home buyer course, which is all about expanding housing opportunity and teaching members how to tap into all the different programs that are available to help folks make that jump into home ownership, how to work with HUD certified housing counselors, how to work with lenders. We're also talking about marketing home ownership to a new generation who might see home ownership differently than their parents did, especially with all the challenges we're facing today. So look out for that new offering. It's going to come online next year, and it will be ready for CE credit. I know there's been some discussion about, having difficulty getting the members in the class. The intention is that this course will be CE ready. Also, I wanted to remind you all to nominate your members. You can also nominate a group or even the association itself for our Fair Housing Champion Award. This is a new initiative we launched a couple of years back to really shine a spotlight on those who are doing the good work of expanding housing opportunity. This is different from the Good Neighbor Award, because that one is about volunteering in your community. The Fair Housing Champion Award can include activities that you do in your business to expand home ownership opportunities to groups and people who've been historically shut out. We select 3 members every year. They're announced during our Fair Housing Month program. We send our amazing video production team to your location to create a beautiful video about your member, and they get a spread in Realtor Magazine along with a $5,000 donation to the housing-related nonprofit of their choice. This program's been up and running for a couple of years now, and what we've seen is that the best applications are written by association staff. So we really want to encourage staff to nominate those shining star members so that NAR can amplify what they're doing and give folks more ideas about how they can get involved. That's all I got, Hannah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Alexia. So if you are in this session and you are thinking, wow, that was a tremendous amount of resources, there's no way I will keep up with all of them, never fear. Within the next week, you are going to get a recording of this webinar, and that email is going to have a list of all the resources that we went over today with clickable links, so you can not only digest them yourself, you can forward them around. It will also include a comprehensive survey where we would really be grateful for your detailed feedback on how this went. As I mentioned, this is a new program, this Ideas Forum, and we want to implement it in the future. And it would be really helpful to have your comments on how this went, any suggestions you have. So stay tuned. I just want to say thank you so much for being here. We're really grateful for your commitment to fair and attainable housing in your local community. These are really important issues that are being worked on all across the country and really make transformative impacts in people's homeownership journey and their family journey and in their lives. So what you're doing makes a big difference. And here at NAR, we want to make sure that we're available to help you in doing that good work. So anytime that any one of us can be a resource, please reach out to us. Again, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.